There are lands that seem nothing more than weeds and stones, yet beneath the dry soil lies a curse that never sleeps. They say every grave is a door, and once that door is torn open, forgotten souls will find their way back. In Jefferson, Texas, a man laughed at the warnings, and from that moment, darkness began to breathe through every corner of his family's life. Texas in summer burned like a furnace. On Highway 59, the wind carried the bitter stench of asphalt. Cicadas screamed in the trees, and the heavy rumble of trucks shook the ground. In the historic town of Jefferson, quiet days were shattered by the announcement of a new project, the Jefferson Plaza, a shopping center that promised to change everything. The man in charge was John Miller, 38, a construction contractor known for his boldness and arrogance. For John, every project was about money, power, and pride. At home, John had a family waiting for him. Mary, 34, gentle and soft-spoken, now pregnant with their second child, and David, their bright 10-year-old son. Their modest house stood on the edge of town, and until now, life had been peaceful. The land chosen for the project lay on Jefferson's outskirts, covered in oak trees. But everyone in town knew it had once been the resting place of Mexican immigrants. Time had buried their stories. Gravestones cracked and fell, weeds swallowed the paths, and only a few weathered Spanish inscriptions clung to the stones. Locals whispered that the ground was not to be disturbed. Some claimed to see candlelight between the trees, others heard voices at night, and a few swore of a woman in white who wandered the old cemetery, her hair hiding her face, her eyes burning like embers. When John heard these tales, he laughed. If the dead could stop us, Houston would never have its skyscrapers, he said. The workers went silent, though unease shadowed their faces. Mary was different. She had always been sensitive to unseen things. When John told her the project would level the old cemetery, she paled. "John, maybe you should be careful. People say those souls were never at peace." John waved her worry away. "Nonsense, Mary. Don't let superstition get into your head. We need this. This project will change our lives." David's eyes lit up when he heard there would be a theater, game arcades, and restaurants. He was too young to feel fear. Mary stayed quiet, but at night she dreamed of a wooden door rotting in a forest, with whispers in a language she could not understand drifting through the cracks. The first morning of construction. The sun rose high, but the air was strangely cold. Machines roared, shattering the silence of the oaks. A Mexican worker named Carlos ran forward. "Mr. Miller, please, wait. These are graves. We must make an offering before we disturb them." John glared. "Do you think I believe in ghosts? We have a deadline. If you're afraid, you can quit." Carlos lowered his head, retreating with fear in his eyes. Moments later, the excavator struck a stone slab. A sharp crack split the air, and a weathered tombstone broke apart, its Spanish letters glaring through the dust. The ground seemed to hold its breath. John climbed down, stepping on the fragments. "Just stones," he scoffed. Then he saw the great oak rising in the middle of the site. Its trunk so wide 3 men could not encircle it, its branches blotting out the sun. He pointed. "Cut it down. I want that wood for my dining table," Carlos whispered under his breath. "Dios mío." That evening, John came home, proud. "I had the oak felled today. The wood will make a fine table for us." Mary froze. Something in her heart clenched, but she said nothing. At dinner, David suddenly stopped eating, his gaze fixed on the ceiling. "Mum, Someone's standing outside the window. Mary turned, but only darkness and the old fence looked back. She forced a smile, hugging him. You're imagining things. The light above them flickered, then burst with a snap, plunging the kitchen into shadow. John cursed under his breath. Mary, though, felt her blood run cold. In the dark, she swore she heard a whisper in Spanish, soft as the wind, no nos molestes. Do not disturb us. The days after the groundbreaking were heavy with unease. Each morning the workers arrived, machines growling as they tore through the mist that clung to the edge of Jefferson. Yet no matter how loud the engines roared, a suffocating silence lingered over the site. The birds were gone. Even the insects had ceased their chorus. John refused to notice. To him, silence meant progress, and progress meant money. He barked orders like a general, mocking the fear on the faces of his crew. When a young worker named Miguel quit after hearing someone whisper his name while he worked alone, John sneered, cowered. But at home, Mary felt the change. The first night after the great oak was cut down, she dreamed of standing in the middle of a forest. The air was thick and choking. All around her rose crooked wooden crosses, half sunken into the soil. Behind them stood dozens of blurred figures with hollow eyes. They did not move, only watched. And far away, beneath a dead tree, a woman in white lingered, her hair spilling forward to cover her face. Mary jolted awake, clutching her belly as though to shield the child inside. She told John over breakfast. He only laughed. You're tired, Mary. Pregnancy makes the mind play tricks. Don't let superstition get to you. But David had begun to change as well. Once bright and playful, the boy grew quiet, spending hours with his sketchbook. His drawings chilled Mary. Graves, twisted trees, faces with empty eyes. Where did you see these, David? She asked, voice trembling. Outside, he whispered. They're standing out there, Mum. One evening, Mary found soil scattered across David's bed. She brushed it away, only to find it again the next night. Finally, David admitted through tears. They come when I'm asleep. The people from the ground. They don't want us here. Mary's heart sank. She begged John, please, John. Something is wrong. You have to stop this. John slammed his glass down. Enough. I won't let fear destroy this. I'm building for our future. Don't poison our son's head with nonsense. But even as he spoke, cracks showed in his confidence. At the site, accidents mounted. Machines stalled without reason, cables snapped, steel beams fell. One truck overturned, killing its driver. The crew muttered that the Miller project was cursed. Carlos, the old Mexican laborer, came to John once more, voice urgent. Senna, this land belongs to the dead. You have cut their tree, broken their stones. You must make it right. If not, they will not forgive. John shoved him aside. Get out of my sight. That night, sitting alone at his desk, the oak wood freshly delivered for the new dining table, John thought he heard a knock at the window. He looked up, saw only the dark. Then a whisper slid through the glass Spanish words he couldn't understand. He poured another drink and told himself it was the wind the next evening. The Millers gathered around the polished oak table. Mary's skin crawled. David wouldn't touch his food, only stared at the grain of the wood. They're angry, Dad, he said softly. You shouldn't have taken their tree. John's fist crashed down, rattling the plates. Enough, David. Stop this nonsense. The lights flickered, then went dark. In the silence came a low murmur, faint, like wood creaking, yet forming words. Mary froze. This time, sound understood, el pecado. The sign, her blood ran cold. She turned to John, his face was pale, his hand shaking around the glass. That night, thunder tore through Jefferson. Mary woke to David's scream. She rushed to his room, finding him rigid at the window. "She's out there, Mum," he whispered. Lightning split the sky. For a heartbeat, Mary saw her, a woman in white standing among the trees, her tangled hair veiling her face. When the light died, she was gone. Mary clutched David, whispering prayers. But deep in her heart, she knew this was only the beginning. Since the construction began, the nights in Jefferson grew heavier. The sky was swallowed by grey clouds, the moon hidden, leaving only the sound of wind slicing through the trees like the cries of the dead. Inside the new house, Mary could no longer sleep. Every time she drifted off, she dreamed of a massive wooden door buried deep underground, with countless blackened hands clawing to break free. One night, she awoke to find handprints smeared across the mirror, fresh, damp, as though someone from inside the glass had tried to reach her. David grew stranger by the day. He would sit for hours in the dark, whispering to someone unseen. Once, Mary pressed her ear close and froze when she heard him murmur, "I promised. I won't tell them." One morning, she discovered a small human bone wrapped in red cloth beneath David's pillow. When she asked, he calmly said, "My friend gave it to protect me." Mary's stomach turned cold. She hid it from John, but deep down she knew something had already taken hold of her son. At the construction site, death seemed to hang in the air. Machines broke down without explanation. One worker swore he saw an entire procession of ragged figures walking past the excavation pit. But when he turned, they were gone, leaving only the acrid stench of burning incense. Another was found slumped dead in his truck, his face twisted as though he had glimpsed unspeakable terror. John still tried to deny it, but he, too, was haunted. One night, reviewing blueprints in his office, he looked into the mirror and saw his own reflection grinning, while his real face remained still. Panicked, he smashed the glass, but from the shards, a whisper crawled into his ears, "Your blood will feed us." The house itself began to rot from within. Black, tar-like liquid oozed from the walls, reeking of decay. The chandelier rattled violently, though the air outside was still. At night, footsteps circled their beds low, heavy, endless until dawn. During a thunderstorm, Mary found David standing in the living room, eyes shut, chanting in a language that was not his own. When she approached, he lifted his head. His once blue eyes had turned milky white. A man's voice, deep and foreign, echoed from his throat. "We were betrayed. This land belongs to our blood." Mary screamed. John froze, powerless to explain. As David collapsed, every candle in the house snuffed out at once, plunging them into absolute darkness. From deep beneath the ground, the beat of drums began to rise, slow, solemn, like an ancient funeral march. That night, none of them slept. The family huddled together in silence, trembling, and for the first time, John admitted to himself, perhaps they had awakened something that should never have been disturbed. In the days after the storm, Jefferson felt like another world. The rain lingered, and thick fog swallowed the streets, turning the town into a vast graveyard. Whispers of the Mexican curse spread quickly. Neighbors avoided the Miller family. One night, Stones clattered against their gate as someone screamed, "You've committed a sin. You'll drag all of Jefferson into hell." Mary clutched David tighter. The boy grew thinner, shadows darkening beneath his eyes, yet he swore she still stood outside his window, watching. Whenever Mary turned, she saw only drifting fog, but she knew her son wasn't lying. John could no longer deny it. At night, he too heard the drums pounding from the site, though construction had ceased. Each beat echoed like the heart of the dead slow, steady, suffocating, desperate. Mary sought Father Alvarez, an old Mexican priest the locals trusted. He listened in silence, then shivered. "They warned you, but your husband would not listen. Jefferson is built on blood. The ones buried there will never rest." He pressed a silver cross into Mary's hands, etched with symbols she did not recognize. His voice trembled. "Keep it with you. When the house falls into darkness again, if you hear them calling, do not answer. No matter whose voice they take, do not speak." Mary thanked him, but dread remained. She knew John would never believe. A week later, disaster struck. Workers discovered that the foundation had collapsed, exposing an ancient crypt. Dozens of skeletons lay inside, some wrapped in red cloth, some with skulls shattered. Police arrived, but curiously, every report vanished from record. One officer confessed quietly to John, "Something doesn't want us interfering. Stop before it's too late." That night, as John drove past the site, he saw hundreds of candles flickering round the pit. In their glow stood figures in white robes, chanting the Spanish funeral hymn. He slammed the brakes, heart racing. But in an instant, they were gone. Only the wind howled across the barren ground. From then on, the Miller home became a trap. At night, the walls cracked, leaking dirt mixed with blood. The ceiling dripped a thick, foul black liquid. Mary once caught David tracing strange symbols on the wall, exactly like those carved into the silver cross. When she demanded to know why, he whispered, "She told me to draw them, to open the way home." Mary pleaded with John to leave Jefferson, but he shouted, "If we run, everything is lost. They only want to scare us. I will not let them win." In that instant, every window shattered. A freezing gust swept in, carrying the sound of mournful cries. Mary clutched David, screaming, while John stood frozen, watching as shadows multiplied across the walls, dozens of faceless figures kneeling, arms outstretched toward him. The following night of rain, Mary finally saw the woman in white. She stood at the end of the hallway, tall, skeletal, hair hanging over her face, her tattered dress smeared with mud and blood. Even from afar, Mary felt the burning gaze shining through her veil of hair. Mary staggered back. The woman didn't move. She simply tilted her head and whispered, return it, or your blood will feed us." Suddenly, David appeared from his room, eyes glazed, lips repeating her words like a sleepwalker. Mary shrieked, grabbed him, and when she turned, the hall was empty. The stench of earth and incense lingered in the air. That night, John drowned himself in whiskey, slumped in the living room. Near midnight, the front door creaked open, though it had been locked. Dozens of pale figures drifted inside, surrounding him. None had faces, only hollow voids. Mary carried David into the basement. Above them, fists pounded on the door. Voices layered over one another, hissing, "Go, go, before it's too late." Mary sobbed, clutching the glowing silver cross. Its faint light pushed back the dark pressing in on them. But the voices grew louder. Last chance. Return what is ours, or all will be buried. Through the crack of the basement door, Mary saw John's body dragged backward into a whirl of shadows. His scream tore through the night, and the house shook violently, as though it too was about to collapse into the grave below. The Miller house shook violently after John was dragged into the swirling darkness. Mary clutched David in the basement, her heartbeat thundering in her chest. John's screams fell silent, replaced by a suffocating stillness. Then, above them, footsteps echoed slow, deliberate, as if hundreds were marching across the floor. David's eyes snapped open, his pupils turning ghostly white. When he spoke, it was no longer the voice of a child. "They've returned. Blood must be paid with blood." Mary trembled, pulling him close, but he thrashed in her arms, staring at her with a chilling clarity. "You can't save us. They've already chosen." The basement door suddenly burst open. A freezing wind swept down, carrying whispers in Spanish, countless voices overlapping. The candles flickered violently and died. In the dark, Mary felt unseen hands brushing her shoulders, tugging at her hair and clothes. The stench of damp earth and rotting flesh filled the air. Summoning the last of her strength, Mary dragged David outside. The Jefferson sky glowed red like blood, lightning cracking endlessly. At the construction site, the pit had split open, yawning like the mouth of hell. Dozens of pale figures circled it, singing and weeping in unison, their voices a dirge of vengeance. Mary tried to run toward the church, but David resisted, his eyes burning. "She's calling me. If I go, they'll only grow angrier." The ground split beneath them, jagged fissures tearing across the road. Skeletal hands clawed out, grasping at the air. David fell to his knees, sobbing. "Mum, I don't want to go with her, but I can't stop it." Desperate, Mary scooped him up and fled through the woods toward Father Alvarez's church. Behind them, funeral drums thundered, driving the spirits closer. The church doors slammed open as Mary burst inside. Father Alvarez was at the altar, praying, sweat pouring down his aged face. His eyes widened at the sight of David. "It's too late. They've taken him." Mary begged through her tears. Alvarez pressed a silver cross to David's forehead. Instantly, the boy shrieked, his body convulsing. A woman's voice erupted from his mouth. "Traitor! How dare you oppose us, Alvarez?" The air turned glacial. Candles burned blue. Statues of saints wept blood. Alvarez jammed the cross into the ground, shouting, "Spirits bound by injustice, release the boy. Take the guilty, not the innocent." David's screams ceased. Then came laughter, sharp and merciless. His eyes turned white as he rose to his feet, glaring at Alvarez. "You'll die with them. Your blood will be the first offering." Wind howled through the church, slamming the doors shut. Mary screamed as shadowy figures rose from the pews. Advancing silently, the dead marched closer, their faces pale and blurred, their voices a chorus of sorrow and rage. Moonlight bled red through the stained glass windows. David's voice blended with another, darker one. "You took our land. Now your blood will feed it." Alvarez lifted his cross, but green fire from the candles lashed out, engulfing him. He screamed in pain, yet continued to pray, his words devoured by whispering voices. Mary dragged him out of the flames. He clutched her arm, gasping, "There's only one way. Take the boy back to the grave, where it began. It must end." The town was chaos outside. Lightning split the skies, the earth buckled. Neighbors fled, only to be dragged into the cracks by phantom hands. Mary ran with David, the child thrashing in her arms. "Mum, please. If we go back, I won't be me anymore." Tears streamed down her face. "If I lose you, it will be in my arms." To them, at the sight, the pit yawned wider, exhaling bone-chilling cold. A woman stood at its edge, dress in tatters, hair veiling her face, a decaying infant cradled in her arms, the spirit that had haunted them all along. "You disturbed my rest," she hissed. "This child will take the place of the one I lost." Mary screamed back, "No. He's my son, not yours." Alvarez staggered forward, raising his cross. "You were wronged, spirit, but stealing the innocent will never bring peace. Let God judge you." The spirit shrieked, wind tearing through the sight. Alvarez was flung aside, blood spilling from his mouth. Still he crawled forward, chanting in Latin. David convulsed violently, veins bulging under his skin. Mary clutched him tightly. "Fight her, David. Remember me." For a fleeting moment, his eyes cleared. Then the spirit laid her skeletal hand on his shoulder. His face twisted, half child, half demon. "Mum, I can't hold her back." Mary turned to Alvarez, desperate. "Save him." Alvarez's voice broke. "There's only one way, but it will cost your soul." Mary froze. "If you offer yourself, the spirit will release him. But you'll be bound here, forever." The storm roared. Shadows pressed in. The woman's figure loomed closer, cradling her corpse child. Mary looked at her son's tear-streaked face. She screamed, "Take me instead. Leave my son." The wind fell silent. The spirit's hair whipped back, her rotted smile widening. She reached for Mary, pressing her hand against the mother's chest. Mary felt her soul being torn away. She gasped, expecting oblivion, but instead, a terrible calm washed over her. Her body did not fall. Her eyes opened, glowing faintly in the darkness. Her lips moved, but the voice that came out was not her own. "I will remain. The boy is free." David collapsed, sobbing, as his mother stood before him alive, yet not. Her face was the same, but her gaze was distant, hollow, belonging to something else. Slowly, she turned and stepped into the pit alongside the grieving spirit. Vanishing into the smoke, the ground rumbled, then sealed shut. The storm above faded, leaving Jefferson eerily quiet. David clung to Alvarez, screaming for his mother. The priest held him back, tears in his eyes. "She's still here, but no longer as you knew her. The law of the dead has claimed her." In the silence, faintly, almost tenderly, a lullaby drifted through the night, the voice of Mary. Echoing from beneath the earth, Jefferson would never sleep peacefully again. Years later, Jefferson had changed. The collapsed construction site was nothing more than an empty field overgrown with weeds, and the story of the Millers had faded into silence. But David, the boy from that night, had grown into a man with a gaze far darker than anyone his age. Since that fateful evening, he often dreamed of his mother standing in the shadows, calling his name in a voice both tender and distant. And slowly, as if guided by an unseen hand, David began to realize he could hear the lost souls that lingered around the town at first. It was only whispers, flickers in mirrors, or the chill of cold fingers brushing his shoulder as he walked alone at night. But in time, he understood. These were spirits that had not yet found release. No longer running, David began to listen. He spoke with them, helped them release their hatred, and guided them toward peace. The people of Jefferson whispered about his unnatural gift, but David knew the truth. It was the legacy his mother had left behind. The law of the dead had never vanished. It had only taken a new form. And now David was its keeper, a figure who stood between two worlds, alive yet forever burdened with the voices of the restless. Jefferson had faded into the past, but the darkness had never disappeared. David had grown, carrying eyes that seemed to see both worlds. Every night, the whispers still came, restless souls calling his name, begging for release. One cold moonlit night, as David stepped beyond the borders of the town, he heard a familiar lullaby drifting from afar, long, aching, unending. And then, before him, the road shrouded in mist unfolded, leading to distant lands where countless lost souls still waited for a guide. David understood. His journey had only just begun, and the law of the dead was still being written. Thank you for walking with peace through a journey filled with darkness and mystery. Ghost stories are not only meant to frighten us, but also to remind us that in this world, there are still things beyond explanation. If you felt the chills, or simply found yourself drawn into the shadows, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel, so we can continue uncovering untold secrets together. Remember, the darkness always has ears to listen, and we will meet again in the next story. Peace in the shadows. Farewell until we meet again.